over a $10 million project, there's a board investment committee which reviews and those reappraisals as well. Finally, risk management, which talked about, the other speakers have talked about, but more particularly in terms of whether it be government policy, whether it be traditional things like foreign exchange, insurance, and so on and so forth. The other one, which is not part here, which has been mentioned by a couple of speakers, obviously, the communication with stakeholders, whether it be the government, and especially if you're a listed company with investors, foreign investors, local investors, and the lot, basically. And of course, if you are a large borrower like ourselves, then obviously with the banks as well becomes very critical as well. Okay. Moving on, what were the global trends and the effect on Pakistan? I think Sareem Saab has done a very good job, so I'll just simply skip through it a little bit. Basically, with the fall in GDP in the 2007-8 and beginning of 2009, obviously our own GDP fell substantially and therefore went into a recessionary environment. The deleveraging in the world obviously reduced the access to capital. For example, for a company like us, which were expanding very fast, we found out that suddenly international commercial loans were not available. ECAs, which were very keen to lend to Pakistan, suddenly dropped out and they were not willing to come to Pakistan. And eventually, even because all our borrowings are benchmarked to the GOP borrowing, when the GOP cost of funds went up, then obviously our own cost of funds went up. And FDIs obviously started going down as well. What happened with falling asset prices, when we had a lot of portfolio investors in our stock as well. I remember Sareem Saab and myself, we were in February in Singapore at the United conference, speaking to a lot of investors, and most of them had, at least before that, started pulling out investments from the stock market because not necessarily anything to do with Pakistan, which was also part of the reason, but mainly because when their own portfolio had to contract because of margin calls elsewhere, they had to withdraw money from the stock market, obviously compounding the effect on the Pakistani stock markets as well. The financial sector, obviously the deleveraging impact that Sareem have talked about, we as in the Pakistani banks are quite insulated as such. Although, having said that, I'll talk about corporates like us, which we maintained our rating. Because of the risk awareness of the local banks, we sort of got in a way of credit because they were the only ones who wanted to lend to companies like us. The higher commodity prices obviously led to higher fiscal and current account deficits. You all know about that. I think the war on terror, in a way, while it is overall negative to the economy, obviously has led to indirect benefits in terms of the bilateral and multilateral flows with the objective of helping Pakistan get over this issue. There were a lot of flows which obviously supported the exchange rate as well as development expenditure. Okay, so if we go back to our own company and what we did as a strategy, and this strategy we made in the early 2000s, and the rationale or the thinking behind this was that we should be in businesses where Pakistan is globally competitive in, or is shielded from international competition, and I'll tell you about the businesses we've gone into, and to venture into opportunities that overlap with our own strengths. And for example, at Engro we said, what are our own strengths? Things like project management, engineering expertise, ability to raise capital, knowledge of agriculture, and so on and so forth. And we took those strengths and overlapped it with areas where Pakistan would be competitive in, and that's how we came up with the areas we will be doing business in. And the broad areas which we identified were fertilizer, which were our core business, food and agriculture, power and infrastructure, and we had a niche business in petrochemical which we would be continuing. And what did we do in each of them? And this is starting from, let's say, 2005 time frame and continuing till now, is that we did a major expansion in fertilizer, almost $1 billion or so. We've gone into foods. You've probably heard of the Allbirds and Taran brands. This is a venture into dairy. And we will be going into other businesses like rice very soon. We've almost invested something like $150 million in the food business already, including 2 plants, one in Sahiwal, now outside Spain. Power generation, our first IPP, which was based on Burgate gas at Khadarpur, is now up and about. In fact, it came on stream 3 months before the required date as such. We have now embarked upon the next power initiative, which is we want to develop the third coal field, and we entered into a joint venture with the government of Sindh for developing that field, and which will be dovetailed with a power plant as well. This is going to be a huge venture, and I think if it does happen, then probably be a country-turning venture as such as well. In petrochemicals, we've had a business with the Japanese PVC, which is expanded, gone into caustic soda, and that is also a niche we're doing pretty well. Now, what did we do to capitalize on the downturn? What happened and what did we do? I think the biggest thing which I can talk about is really, which Saqib also mentioned, believe in the long-term viability of the country. Unless you do that, all your actions will be very superfluous. You have to believe that this country is here to stay, and being a local company, that's the biggest advantage you will have versus any multinational. And therefore, if you believe in that, then all your actions will be fashion particular. So, even in the downturn, and I talked about the major projects which were conceived in 2006 and 2007, but even in the downturn of 2008 and 2009, we launched our rice project. The plant will get completed this year. We launched the ice cream project, and the third mining project, which we launched about 6-7 months ago, the feasibility part of these, was also done when the things were really bad, and we said that we need to believe that this is the country is here to stay, and that's how we invested. We're looking at a offshore phosphate-based fertilizer in North Africa, and again, that is based because we are continuously importing DAP, and the way to capture the margins was because we don't have the raw material, but we to put up the venture there and then get the product back. And obviously, we'll also be almost number one now. Obviously, the competition was not so much amenable to reacting as such because they themselves were cutting costs in the downturn. Having said that, we also went into a cost rationalization mode. I mean, businesses which were not doing that well, we cut costs. For example, our US operation of our industrial automation company, we actually reduced costs by 15% year on year, simply because US faced the big brunt of the recession and capital spending went down. Talent acquisition, we believe, as I said, we believe that we will come out of this phase, and we actually increased our manning numbers, went out and hired engineers, MBAs, CAs, and those were eventually absorbed this year. We created a pool of 15-20 of these high-quality people, took them, and then they eventually got absorbed as those came about. We made some good purchasing calls on commodities. For example, our packaging material is polypropylene, polyethylene, we use that, milk powder, etc. So all these were done taking a slightly longer term view rather than reacting in the short run. Okay, so the last sort of topic of my presentation was basically the expansion or the fundraising which we did back in 2007 for our fertilizer project, which was the largest private sector investment to date, and I hope the third project will be even bigger than that. So, if you see a scenario in 2007, there was a robust and conducive capital market. The problem challenge for us was that in addition to fertilizer, we were simultaneously raising money for our petrochemical and energy expansion. So we raised about a total of 1.6 billion in that time frame, and we spent about 110 billion rupees in these 4 years in expansion. Pakistan credit rating was pretty good. It was B+ or B, double B, depending on which agency you look at.